My name is Mike, and I'm an alcoholic. I was given the gift of sobriety on March 20th of 1987, and I'm pretty grateful for that right now. I have had a very low energy day today, managing some physical stuff that's going on, and it's one of those times where I had looked forward to coming here to share at this specific group, and was delighted when Terry asked me. Thank you, Terry. And then as the days crept along, I thought, well, what excuse can I make that would sound even vaguely? And I'd already been lassoed in by two of my best friends to go to dinner, and then Sarah was there too, and there's just no fucking way out. And that's where I was for 2 years before I got here. I don't know. So oh good, that's bold digits in this little clock. That's very helpful. I don't know. I was talking to Travis and I were talking today, and I did what I've with the talk coming up. I did what I almost always do. I don't really have much control over it, and I kind of give a little bit of the talk when I wake up in the morning. I'm sitting there with my blanket and reading a little, doing a little meditation, all that kind of stuff, and then I think, well, this is the biggest waste of time I've ever, why would I even do this? And then I know I do it because it makes my ego feel great, because I'm giving there when I'm on the couch by myself with my blanket and my coffee, I'm my own audience, and I'm happy as a clam listening to me. And but there is also, it provides a certain amount of adrenaline sitting there, because I can make it a really good story. But then this morning when I woke up and I was doing my morning reading in Daily Word, it was about faith. And I ceased to worry about the balance of the day or the talk itself, because it said the nature of faith is that whatever you need has already been provided. So I assume that whatever I need to do to stand up here with you guys tonight has already been provided. I just hope that the conduit stays open long enough for me to tap into it. 7 o'clock is actually kind of pushing it, guys. Someone told me it was an 8 o'clock meeting, and I thought I was going to have to score some speed to even go do the talk tonight. So, you can get a little old. There's a lot of things that happen, you know. The stamina begins to leave, and it comes and it goes, and 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, so anyway. I'm not like Lila, but I get it when Lila says, and she's hemming and hawing, you know, before she gets into her talk, because she says she's waiting for God to come. Now, we all know God's already here, right? I mean, we know that. We take it to the bank every fucking waking moment of our lives if we're to stay active, alive, alert, and happy in this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. His presence is one of the most genuine manifestations of this whole deal. But I hope he may be showing up with that. I don't know. That was pretty good. I don't know. The one thing I was thinking this morning, and I was thinking, and I was talking to my friend John yesterday, and he said, you know, this is a very serious deal for me. This is life and death for me. And I was thinking about that this morning, not the life and death part of it as much as the fact that I am a hopeless, helpless alcoholic. I had lost the power of choice when it came to drinking. And the book tells me, the one I read, the one under title Alcoholics Anonymous, that we have found no way humanly known to ever regain that power. Now, when I was 15 years old, I started taking amphetamines. I started drinking on purpose and getting drunk on purpose, and I started wanting to die. Now, I don't know how you wind up like that at 15 in this little red brick house with white shutters on a corner lot in Plano, Texas in 1953. It just does not make any sense. But that's where I found myself. I needed an answer and I needed an escape before I really knew what all of that meant. And I found myself in this whole thing, the breadth of what we have today. When I think about the things that Kathleen's introduced me to, when I think about the history that Terry brings to us, when I think about this huge breadth of information we have available to us today, and not just our program, but the other programs. I'm working the ACA steps right now, and you got to be fucking tough to do that. And I was talking to Kathleen about it, and she said, you boys are brave to do that. But I guess the point I'm getting to, maybe really slowly, is that in looking at the little 15-year-old kid who wanted to die, now that's the truth, right? I was also a straight-A student, student council, president of my class, sophomore, junior, not senior. That Richard Weiser beat me out. I'll never forgive him for it, by the way. And he still looks weaselly. We'd go to these reunions. You know, we had our 50th and our 60th, and he still looks like a little weasel. So, yeah. And they've all got 30, 40 pounds on me, so I'm happy as a clam when I go to the reunions. I put on my Dickies and strut forth. So, but anyway, that's all the outside, you know. And I'm the best little student. I'm the best little boy. My mother loves me. My parents from the outside looking in, we've got the perfect family. My father's a salesman. He goes around selling candy and tobacco to sundry stores, and his nickname in the neighborhood was the Candy Man. Fancy that, yeah, Candy Man, because we had a cupboard that was full of candy. And the kids loved to come by. And so to all intents and purposes, we had the perfect little middle-class life in little middle-class Plano, Texas, when there were only 1,500 people there. But yet I wanted to die. And so with the vastness of the program, whether it's going to be Al-Anon, whether it's ACA, whatever it is, I can go take a look and find out the causes and conditions that led to that decision when I was 15 years old. And I'll probably circle back around and get to a little bit of that too, but I do want to. I don't feel very funny tonight, but I do want to tell some stories, which I'm pretty sure the history, right, Travis? History is born that they're often funny, right? So I want to tell some funny stories about all this too, but this hopelessness. I found something when I drank alcohol for the first time that totally changed my life. And when you pop that on top of these eschatrol pain pills, not pain pills, but eschatrol diet pills, it was pretty smooth sailing there as a freshman in high school. And I loved drinking. I loved everything about it. I loved the burping. I loved the barfing. I loved the getting sick. I loved having to put one foot out of the bed so it would steady the bed from turning round and round. And I loved driving down the street holding one eye, and I'd laugh all the time. I'd take a drink and I'd just start laughing, and I'd laugh until I passed out. And I loved everything about drinking. And, you know, nothing happens quick, and it's that there are several single sentences in our textbook which are some of the biggest understatements in the entire world. And one of them is in Bill's story. He says, and gradually things got worse. You know? But the problem with me is that every time they get worse, that would become my new normal. I no longer thought it was worse. And you do that over the period of 25 years, and your normal, what was you couldn't even imagine tolerating 6 months ago is your everyday waking life. You find yourself at a bottom which you would rather have avoided. I say that, rather have avoided, because it was tough, and it lasted for 2 years. So one of my drinks of choice was Thunderbird wine. I love Thunderbird. You know, it never got within a block of a grape, right? But they called it Thunderbird wine. And just back to this whole ritual of Thunderbird wine. I don't know, have you ever drunk it? Oh, the word, what's the word? Thunderbird, you know, and it's just the best stuff ever. And it's thick and it's syrupy like cough syrup. It's not unlike codeine cough syrup, which, by the way, you could buy over the counter at that time, nor unlike paregoric, which was this thick, sweet, syrupy stuff that was alcohol and opium. And when you got all three of those things, and you got your stereo record player, and you lifted the speakers off so you had true stereophonic sound, and I'd put on Procol Harum, I'd drink my Thunderbird wine, I'd drink my Cherokee coating cough syrup, I'd take my paregoric, and you don't fucking move for hours. And I'd sit there and I'd take that and I'd drink that and I'd love it and I'd be smiling and laughing, listening over and over and over again to the whiter shade of pale. Boy, it doesn't get much better than that. Whew. It actually sounds like a lot of fun right now. I hope I'm not talking myself into a Thunderbird relapse here. It just, all of a sudden, it sounded like a very nice way to escape on a Saturday night. But I loved it. And it didn't, gradually things got worse. It didn't really change for years. And again, as I said, I'd take a step down and that would become the normal. I don't know where I'm going with this stuff. I want to talk about gender roles a little bit. I don't know nothing. I don't know anything about them. If I didn't have a husband who was much smarter than me and much younger, I might add, I wouldn't know anything about them. But he takes me to task, and we had the cisgender conversation, so I could understand what it was. And I am pushing my gender boundaries with my nail polish and doing that stuff, but. When I was growing up, and I had this, we grew up the first 3 years of grade school in Oak Cliff, and I went to Idaho Elementary School, which all the kids affectionately called Lottahui. It was a Lottahui Elementary School. But went there, and I knew something was different when we got this new PE teacher. His name was Mr. Easter. And he had on these little red gym shorts that were about that long. He had on a tight white T-shirt. He had on what was going to be known as sneakers later on, but they were gym shoes, right? And he'd strut around that elementary school, and I knew there was something about Mr. Easter. I wanted what he had. And I didn't even know what I wanted. Because at that time, there were no words to put with the feelings I had. All I know is that there were no other little boys in first grade kind of pattering their little feet after Mr. Easter with their mouth hanging open. And you take a look around and you realize you're the only one doing that, and you go, yeah, this is pretty fucked up. But I didn't even know fucked at that time. I know it now, and I use it often. I had a girlfriend in my business, which was sales to large corporate department stores, and she would sit all of her news. She was the head buyer at Macy's, New York, and she'd sit all of her employees down, and when they came into the office, she said, "I want to get one thing straight with you right now." She said, "I don't care how you've been brought up. I don't care what you think this merchandising is going to be about, but I'm here to tell you right now that fuck is part of the standard business vocabulary." And it became part of mine too. And when we were doing all that selling and all those deals, making deals, 5 o'clock the booze would come out, and we smoked at our desks. And we drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes and on the phone and saying, "I've got all these Christmas ornaments. You think you might be able to squeeze in some Santas in your," drinking and smoking and fuck no, well, let's go. And anyway, little rabbit hole I just fell down. I'm doing my best to rabbit climb out of it right now. But so the gender roles. So I knew I was this little different kid, right? And I had no one else. And this was my biggest, longest kept secret. I had no word to put to it. We hadn't started using the word gay. I'd heard the word fag, but I didn't hear that until I was probably in junior high school, because the 50s were a remarkably unique time. But when you started hearing that stuff, you heard it. And I didn't know what was so different about me. But I remember my first semester at North Texas State, I was on the dean's list. And after that, it just went straight down the toilet. I was about 10 years sober, and I said, I need to get my bachelor's degree because I dropped out of college with 12 hours left for a bachelor's degree. And I got my transcript, and I read it, and it was just as bad as I recall it being. It hadn't changed at all in all of those years. And I was faking being a heterosexual, and I was had a fiancé, and I loved my fiancé, and I was having these fantasies that would just like smack me across the face when I was in the middle of a class. And then as I got my first pair of faded Levi 501s, and I had a little love affair with those. And wore them religiously and still do as far as blue jeans. No other blue jeans exist. I'm absolutely obsessed with Levi 501s still to this day. And I was with Carol, and our house had just gotten busted, and we were on all sorts of lists, and I knew that the heat was on and it was time to get out of Denton. But Carol came to me and she said, I'm breaking up with you, little beaver. That was my nickname. I was Carol's little beaver, and she was my sweet pea. And I'd fake fuck, I don't know if you've ever fake fucked, but it happens sometimes. And you're so excited, and you make it look like you're so excited, and you make all the right sounds, and you do everything except have an ounce of emotion in it. And she said, I'm leaving you, little beaver. And we were standing in a parking lot there at North Texas State, and I thought, well, I'll be goddamned. I'd invested a lot in this 3-year relationship. I knew her parents. We went to her home down in South Texas. It also happened that some of the best peyote fields were down near where she grew up in Alice, Texas, and we go dig peyote and visit her parents and go, ooh, yeah, Miss Montfordini, that's right. I'm just like crazy as lunatics. And I looked at her and I thought, how on earth are you doing this to me? And I thought at that very moment I made a decision based on self, which followed me all the way into the rest of my sobriety. Followed me through my drinking and into sobriety. I said, I'm never going to be hurt like this again. I'm going to be tough when it comes to love. No one's going to hurt me like this again. And so I don't know if you make a decision like that you're going to be tough when it comes to love. But if you have enough drugs in you, and you have enough alcohol in you, and you have enough twisted nature, that suddenly and soon that being tough in love means being mean in love. And then that twists off, and it means being violent in love. And that twists off into a whole nother world where punches are thrown, where people are hurt, where there's blood. I was getting ready to say where there's teeth, but there weren't any teeth. I still lie. It sounded, if I could have said, and there were teeth on the, it would have been good for the story, but I got all that confused. And that was as much about Carol Montfordini, God rest her, she's still alive. Her husband just died of COVID with the first wave in Manhattan. She's a quite talented actress and still works. She's good. That was also based just as much on not wanting to be and appear queer. If I appeared tough and I wore the chains and I wore the leather and I wore the harnesses, Alan, that's a joke. We met at the Sundance Kids Leather Bar, and the first time we met, he reminded me today that all I had on at that time was a harness, a jock strap, and work boots. And we struck up a friendship. But it was all, running from queer, right? And I know I was reading the pages of your group today, of We Are Not Saints today, where it is avowedly at the very front page, right when the screen pops up, it says we are LGBTQ plus, ampersand. I'm adding all that in, but it's the truth. And I hated myself for being gay. Hated myself beyond anything that I'd ever hated in my life. So, okay, so let's see here. So, in 1976, I'm working down on Cedar Springs, and I'm been made a business partner. There were three of us who owned a company called Union Jack. And Union Jack was making money hands over fists. We were selling Fiorucci. We sold more 501 Levi jeans on Cedar Springs Street than any other retailer, including major department stores in the United States. And we also sold Viceroy jeans, I don't know if you remember those, highly decorated and tight as a glove, to all the hookers on Cedar Springs. Because back in the early 70s, in 72, 73, it was not to make this racial, but it was simply the truth. There was just black female hooker after black female hooker walking those same streets where now we're, oh, we're liberated, and we're walking on, but we'd sell them and we'd make them even tighter. And we had a tailor that would come in and he could tailor a booty in those things that would just knock your socks off. But so I'm working there, and all of a sudden this guy comes through the door, and his name's David Garner. And I said, I'm going to marry that guy. That's how my decision making goes in these like life-changing decisions. And within 30 days, we were living together. Prior to David walking through the doors of the Union Jack, I'd been doing amphetamines my entire adult life, and I'd do them any way you could get them. We'd do black mollies, and you never knew in a black molly what the hell was in it. It could be pseudoephedrine, same thing you get in this like cold medicine, or it could be some kind of amphetamine. Didn't matter. And I was talking to Bruce Horton about all this stuff, and I was into the blacks and the blues, and he was into the reds, yellows, and pale blues. Now those are the phenobarbitals and the barbiturates. And we loved, all the drag queens loved barbiturates back then. I mean, it was, and they'd be doing their drag song, and all of a sudden they'd just fucking fall over. And you'd wonder, well, she's had a few too many reds tonight. And so the phenobarbital people, they'd come over to the speed freaks, and they'd say, man, you got any mollies on you? I've got another Sept to do. And so we'd trade them back and forth. Because if you're a speed freak, in addition to being an active alcoholic, you know you're going to overshoot the fucking mark. And you're going to be so high that you won't be able to stay. You don't think, I can't stay alive this high. And so you prance over to the drag queen and say, I need a yellowbird bad. I got to come down a little bit. And so you do that, and then that would be at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then at 4 o'clock in the morning, and be going, hey, I need some more mollies. Anybody got anything? And because you'd overshot the mark on the barbiturates. You overshoot it on the barbiturates, you overshoot it on the amphetamines, and now you're up and down and up and down. The next thing you know, you're dead as Judy Garland, all right? Because that's what happened to her. She'd be taking speed all day that the studio supplied her, and then she'd go home and she had to sleep, and she'd be taking red birds, yellow birds, little blue birds, and heart, bam, gone. So anyway, we do that, but this little girl came to work for us, and she said, Mike, I know you like speed. I said, yes, I do. I'm quite fond of it, by the way. And she said, have you ever tried anything called meth, crystal? And I said, well, no, I haven't. Tell me a little more about this. And her husband was a dealer with personal relationship with the chemist. It was very much like, what was that TV show? Breaking Bad. It was very Breaking Bad, except from my point of view, it was Breaking Good, because the first snort of that meth I had, I thought, I'm going to do this shit till the day I die. And those are prophetic words sometimes, aren't they? Now, you fast forward another few years to a gay pride parade. We had this little house. There was a quadplex where there's a huge office building now on Hall Street. We lived there, and they were rehabbing it, and all the floors, from one side of the apartment to the other side, there was a drop of about 8 inches. And it was not particularly a good place for drug addicts to live. Because you would walk in the front door and then you'd be going like that, and you'd have to But we lived there, and we got a good deal on the rent. I think that's what kept us there. But I'd done way too much for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you know those beers they serve at Pride? Those little flimsy plastic glasses. It's summertime. It's hot. The hotter it gets, the thinner the more flimsy the beer cups get, and you're doing that. And all of a sudden, I'm out. I'm gone. And they don't know what to do with me. And so they carry me. Some guys carry me back to the apartment and sit me in front of the air conditioner window unit and start putting ice on me. And I'm having this thought, I'm going to die. I'm going to fucking die. I've done it. This is it. This is it. And I said, and I prayed one of those naked prayers that Marie Stenner talked about. One of those prayers where there's absolutely nothing in between me and me. And the only thing is going to be me and God. And this is a foxhole prayer. And I said, God, if you don't let me die, I won't do this meth anymore. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Story of my life. Every day for the last 2 years of my drinking, and even before that. I would wake up every morning, and this will get to a point that goes in with the OD, but every morning I would be kind of, you never really go to sleep if you're an alcoholic speed freak. You don't really. You kind of go into these nether worlds, right, where you've had enough marijuana and you've had enough. By then, my favorite thing was either mezcal or a Cuervo 1800 because it did the trick, and it didn't mess around with it. And so it would take the edge off, and I'd always had a glass of booze by my bed, and a pack of cigarettes, I might add. Smoking and drinking tequila all night is not a good combination. My husband, David, and I got together, and I came to understand that he was much more narrow-minded than I thought he was. It kind of comes fairly quick. But I was there, and I'm smoking and in bed, right, and drinking, and it's again, you're not awake, you're not asleep, you're somewhere. I don't think there's a word for it. I don't know that there really is a word for it. But all of a sudden, have you ever caught a bed on fire? They don't just burst into a blaze. It starts with a little bitty coal. You drop your cigarette on the bed, and you pick it up, and you're looking at it, smoke a little cigarette, put it down. Next thing you know, you look over here in this haze, and you see this, well, it looks like the end of a cigarette on my bed. And it's where the cigarette's lit a hole in my mattress. And it starts just kind of growing. It kind of goes, woo, woo, and gets a little bigger and gets a little bigger. And then all of a sudden, it does blaze up. But that red glowing hole gets about that big before it does. And I just take my drink, pour it on it, and just, go back to bed. And I was also wetting the bed at this time, too, because you don't drink as much tequila as I drank and not piss the bed. And so David was getting really irate about this setting the bed on fire. He said, you're going to kill us. You're going to kill us. And I said, God damn it. I've never met a more narrow-minded man than you. I might set the bed on fire, but there's a strong chance that I will have pissed it out before the night's over. So, and he didn't think that was funny at all. Narrow-minded. I said I was going to tie this up. Was anybody listening about 8 minutes ago where I was going to wrap this up and come back and talk about that? I thought not, yeah. It goes with the territory, these AA meetings. So our first date was out at Jan's house with her girlfriend. And on the table at our first date, this is David and me, there was a bag of marijuana. There was one of those cool bottles of 1800, right, that's kind of angularly shaped, and a gram of meth. And that's how David and I started our relationship, and that's how we were to live the next 11 years together. I don't know if you've ever been in a long-term relationship with another alcoholic meth head, but it's rocky. It's hard to predict what's going to happen. You never really know you never know when it's going to actually come unglued. And it came unglued all the time. And we started doing things to each other. We would say with our mouths and our words, I love you, baby. And I meant it. and then we'd be fucking anything that came into sight. We kept our drugs together. We kept our alcohol together, but we were supposed to always do it together. That's sweet. Yeah, just sweet. And absolutely not going to happen. So I would go to our little combined stash, and I'd just start doing it. And then all of a sudden he's, where's the, and we were doing things and saying that we love each other, and then tricking out on each other and calling each other names that you can never take back. I like to say that I never really blow up and get rid of a lover. We were lovers back then, by the way. We hadn't even become partners yet. Partners was to come in the 80s, I do believe, but we were lovers back then. And I didn't know, I couldn't reconcile anything that was going on. And he began to have a life that existed over here, and mine existed over here. And although we were sharing a roof, we shared no life. And our drug addiction and alcoholism kept getting worse and worse, and we kept going further and further down. I came to on the floor of a motel room in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This was not unusual, but I came to on the floor of a motel room in Tulsa, Oklahoma on March the 18th of 1987. Now, I'd done this before. I'd checked into that motel on Monday, which was the 16th, right? I have no memory of from when I checked in to coming to, rolling around on the floor, crying, going, what the hell has happened to my life? No memory of it. I know there was like a Jack-in-the-Box bag or something, and there was a Jack-in-the-Box on this swanky motel property, and so I know I'd left to at least get some food sometime in that. But I didn't think anything was substantially different from having come to in a place like this, not knowing how I got there, when I got there, having to do everything in retrospect, having to put all the pieces together from this moment and looking back and hoping that you can talk to someone. Someone's going to help you put the pieces together. It's like I went to, my family lives in L.A., and they're moving to Sun Valley, which is, what are those, where the people that stormed the White House, what are those called? What? Yeah, Proud Boys. This is where they live now. It is the international headquarters of the Proud Boys, and I'm not sure I can go visit, but I'll have to. But although that little guy with the antlers was not bad. But I would go there for Christmas, right? We'd go for all these vacations, and I'm this Dallas kid, and so I'm going to L.A., right? And so I'm going to go have some fun. On Christmas Eve, I'm out in not North Hollywood, West Hollywood. And I was with a business associate, and he got me some stuff, and I got high, and just, you just lose track of time, right? And just having the best time. And I just blacked out one more time. And woke up the next morning, or it didn't wake up, but I came to. It was about 5:30 in the morning, and I was stark naked, except I had a gas mask on. And there was still something hanging in the end of that gas mask, some kind of liquid in there that was making me really crazy. And I don't know if you've ever wound up in places and in situations like that, but it kind of takes your breath away for a minute. And you kind of get this thing off, and then you're really naked. And you do this one thing. You look over to see, are they even halfway decent? Right. And you look over and you go, oh, thank God, and then they're coming out of their deal, and it dawns on me that it's Christmas morning. My selfishness and self-centeredness has created a situation for me which my nephew remembers to this day. And so you do what you do. You kind of get a little orientation. You find your way to the 101, and you just kind of go. And I walk in and stink, smell of alcohol, stink of BO, higher in Jesus, Christmas morning. And my little nephew, who was 5 years old, takes one look at me and starts screaming and crying and runs and hugs his mom. And so I have done one more time to a Harold Breyer family holiday. I've been a big hit. And little Joshua said, Mommy, why is Uncle Mike always so grumpy? And he and my sister came to Sunday morning, flew to Sunday Morning Live to watch me get my 25-year chip. And it just so happened that Sunday was the exact anniversary of my 25th anniversary. And it just so happened that I'd been asked to speak, because it was after that talk. John Politis comes rolling back into the room, and he's got a little brown paper bag with 4 little yellow mugs in it with this antipsychotic they'd made me take when I told them I was gay. They said, if you're gay, you're schizophrenic, take this. Mellaril was what it was. But he remembered, and I told that story to him right then, and there was a bond. What had been friction because of me spoiling holidays became a bond. And the amend was made without even an amend being thought of. And so, coming to in the floor of that motel room, the rest happens. It was 87. The AIDS crisis was in full bloom. You remember, Alan, some of you, Terry, some. Remember, Kathleen, Paul. Paul was a buddy. Do you remember buddies? Where non-HIV infected heterosexual men would take a gay man who had HIV and was more than likely dying, and they became their buddy. And so we got out of treatment on a Friday night, and he wasn't feeling good Saturday, wasn't feeling good Sunday, and by Monday I had to take him to Baylor, and by Tuesday he'd had a diagnosis of full-blown AIDS. So this is early sobriety. We're right at 30 days of sobriety. And they determined while my parents were at Family Week that my dad had some neurological dysfunction. It turned out to be early onset Alzheimer's, and it was also quick Alzheimer's. He became crazy as a loon and died within 9 months from that date. And so I've got a dad flying off the face of the earth with Alzheimer's. I've got a partner who's dying, literally dying, every 3 or 4 months with pneumocystis pneumonia going back and forth from Parkland. And I'm thinking, this is what I'm fucking signed up for? This is fucking recovery? And Jack would say, yeah, this is recovery. And you all, and this is where, we hear this all the time, that God will do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. But I will tell you, kids, that God that's doing this is Travis with a blue shirt on, is Sarah with her tattooed arm, is Paul as his buddy, is Patrick opening the doors to this meeting. And that is God doing for me what I could not do for myself, surrounding me with a community, a fellowship, which had grown up about me even in the space of a year. And everything didn't appear good, but everything began somehow working out. So when do you wrap up here? 10 till? Well, good, then I'll wrap up. So David passed away, and you were there. And boy, we were losing them. We would do I don't know if you were alive from then, but we would do body checks looking for Carpochis. Now I'm old, and I've got this blood skin condition where if you barely even touch my skin, this big red thing comes up, and I say, oh my God, it's Carpochis. And it's not. It's just old man disease. And it's like, oh. So we are, hate to be the one that tells you, we're still in a pandemic. May not look like it did, a year ago when we were scuttling around trying to figure out how we're going to maintain our sobrieties, how we're going to maintain our fellowships, how we're going to make this thing work, still make it work when people are starting to get sick. And then we're being told, you don't even need to leave the house, just order your groceries. You can't be around people. There's no cure for this. And then the freezer trucks start stacking up in Brooklyn, right? And you see these images and you go, fuck. We're still there. It just looks different now. I've been through some stuff in the past 6 months. I've had to go back to the beginning to dig things out of my drawer to help me now. Things I would have thought, oh man, I'm 34 and a half years sober. I don't need to go dig that kind of stuff out anymore. I don't need those kind of tools. I'm beyond those tools. But I've been going and getting them and digging them out again. And I'm going to tell a story to wrap it up here, and it maybe go over a little bit of 10, but it's a pretty good story because it's about two beautiful women. And so there was this woman named Marie Stinner. And Marie Stinner was one of Jack's best friends, and she lived in West Hollywood. Lesbian, smashingly beautiful. Oh, my God. She looked like, on the Beverly Hillbillies, the little girl, what was her name? Ellie Mae. She looked like Ellie Mae and had those giant breasts and wore those strapless, right? Strapless dresses. She was just stunningly beautiful. And she was so immersed into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that almost everything that came out of her mouth was, oh my God, I've got to write that down. And so she's talking in one of her talks, and she's 16 years sober. And at that time, her sponsor was a woman that some of you may have met and certainly have heard, named Alabama Carruthers. Now, Alabama Carruthers was from the South, and she sounded like she was from the South. She was also the paid secretary of the North Hollywood group of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if you've ever been to that group, but I've been many times when it was back by the Concrete River, and they had this "Expect a Miracle" sign right behind the podium in neon, except they could never keep it fixed. And so it would just like flicker on and off during everybody's talk and everybody's share. It'd be, expect a miracle. But Alabama was the paid secretary of that group. And so Marie was talking to her on the telephone, right? And she's talking about how wonderful everything was and everything. And then Alabama stops her mid-sentence and says, Marie, you talk as if the best in your life has already happened. And at that time, I think Alabama was probably 26 years sober and Marie was 16 years sober. She said, darling, I've been your sobriety. And I'm here to tell you that the best is yet to come. And this is what I've had to dig out of my drawer. I had an anxiety, beyond an anxiety attack. It lasted 8 hours. I couldn't stop sobbing. The police were called. I was kindly escorted by police escort and EMTs to Clement's emergency and was there for 18 hours, pumping enough drugs in my body to keep me from sobbing. And what I realized is that I had cried every fucking tear I hadn't cried in 2020 in all of those days. It all came out in one big gush over which I had no control. But it set me back because, you see, if you're a man with 34 and a half years sober, you don't end up in the nutty ward, but you do. You can. And everything will work out. And I began thinking about Marie and then some other stuff with this chronic, moderate to severe pain. Need a knee replacement. All this stuff is just like falling apart. And I start thinking, so this is what it's come down to, right? I've got a spiritual program and I've got a spiritual inside that I will put up against anyone. And yet I'm going through this stuff which is just like tearing me to pieces. And so what Alabama told Marie in that moment was, she said, Marie, I want you to go home tonight and get down on your knees and ask the God of your understanding to let you know in your heart that the best is yet to come. Now, I'm in a place in my relationship, 21 years with Larry, where we're doing really good. It's taken work, but I know for a fact the best is yet to come. I'm in a place with my health where I've got a bunch of answers and just waiting for them to be fulfilled, but I hurt, but at the same time I know absolutely that the best is yet to come. I watch the world kind of crumbling around, whether it's what's happening in the Middle East, the Far East, whether it's happening in a hurricane on the Gulf Coast. And I say, how can this keep happening, God? And what I know is, at my core of my heart, that the best is yet to come. And so I've had to pull that prayer out, and I've had to get down on the side of my bed, and I've had to get down on this knee in which there's no cartilage left and get down. I still get down on it because, I don't know, people say you don't really have to kneel, but I believe that gestures are important. I believe that some prostration, that making myself subservient to a power greater than myself is an important thing to do. And I would get down and I would say, God, please let me know in my heart that the best is yet to come. So Marie said this naked prayer, and it worked, because she would go back and share for the next 5 years this story and how the next 5 years of her sobriety were the best she's ever had. It surpassed everything. I've got a spiritual program. I've got a peace that passeth all understanding. The world can be absolutely crumbling around me, and I've got a core of peace and contentment which will not budge. And I know at the same time the best is yet to come. So if you're having one of those dark moments of the soul, when they come around, you can be 2, you can be 7, you can be 34 and a half years sober, and you're having trouble, or you just need a kick in the ass, then maybe tonight, when you get home, you might get down on your knees and ask the God of your understanding to let you know in your heart that the best is yet to come. Thanks.